Everyone, we're going to jump back in with the second half of our workshop on independence and self-care. Our next speaker is Beth Morgan. She works as an independent living specialist focusing on youth and young adult transition at Liberty Resources, Inc., which is the Center for Independent Living for people with disabilities in Philadelphia. Her concentration is to assist youth and young adults with disabilities as they go through the transition process in life.
Everyone, how are you today? I'm fortunate enough to be with you. I'm unfortunate enough to be with you after lunch, so bear with me. Nice to see everyone today. Again, my name is Beth Morgan, and I'm here from Liberty Resources. We are the Center for Independent Living for people with disabilities in Philadelphia. This is a wide range of services that we offer. I'm going to talk about some of the specifics that I offer, and I will get into a little bit of what Liberty Resources does elaboratively as well. Mentoring transitioning voices. When I came up with this program, we were trying to think of a catchy title. Now, granted, this program is 15 years old at this point. So MTV, we were thinking, I'm going to admit I'm 42 years old. So MTV, music, like we thought like, that's cool. Everybody will like that and get into it. When I say MTV to the kids now, they're like, what are you talking about? So please bear with me. But MTV, Mentoring Transitioning Voices, an empowerment program focusing on the success of youth with disabilities transitioning into adulthood. Transition is a change. It's any change from waking up in the morning and being home having breakfast to going to school for the day. Transition is also consists of the change from class to class. Now, when you're older, and you are leaving high school, or you are as a young adult, it's still the same thing. You may not go to classes and have things as formidable the same way, but you're still transitioning. You're still going through changes all of the time. In the workplace, what is it like when different people come up and approach you? What is it like in the workplace when you don't have to abide by rules the same way that you do for school, where there's bells and there's times that you can talk, times that you can talk, things like that. So this is all part of transition. Facts about people with disabilities that we should just be aware of and think of. As a population, there's no one factor that has a more profound effect on the personal economic viability than having a physical disability or intellectual, all disabilities. This is a factor that doesn't get played into a lot of statistics all the time. It's starting to get more recognized, but this isn't always a factor that gets played into. A disability doesn't get played into the factors of people that have limitations often, because people with disabilities we don't know what to do with them. We're just going to hide it, so to speak. And this is something that having a disability is something to take me for my grain of salt, but this is something to be proud of. Wait a minute, I really proud of a disability? A disability is something that you have and or acquire. And I say that it's something to be proud of because I know from personal experience. I am a person with a disability. I have traumatic brain injury. At the age of 12, I was hit by a car walking down the street to go play basketball on a nice summer or spring afternoon with some friends, and a drunk driver came up on the sidewalk and hit me. I went on, without getting into too much detail, I went flying in the air and came back down and hit my head on the cement curb, leaving me with traumatic brain injury, which left me having to learn everything all over again. Walking, talking, breathing, You name it, I had to learn it. But the difference with my disability is I was fortunate enough to relearn it, so to speak. It was more of a recall and bringing things back to the premonition of how I had to go. So again, that goes into the statistics. Again, I was 12 years old, so I'm still a little bit below, but adults ages 21 to 64 with disabilities typically earn less without disabilities. I didn't accept that statistic. I wasn't going to do less, be less, or have less because I had traumatic brain injury and I had to do things in a different way now. And I was a 12-year-old kid, so I did have a lot of animosity toward it and learning. And my cognitive therapist, well, my physical, speech, and occupational when I was in the hospital, and then it was transitioned to cognitive and physical therapies when I left the hospital. But I didn't take that, or I was very reluctant with that, oh, you have to do it differently. No, I don't. I can do everything that everybody else can do, and I can do it the same way. I'm sorry, I get passionate when I speak, so as you can tell, because this is personal. But I was quick enough to learn on my own that doing it a different way, I'm being successful. Copying my notes. Again, I was 12 years old when this occurred. I'm 42. I still don't copy notes well. So how do well, I'm not in classes anymore. I don't have to study and do these things the same way anymore. How many meetings do we have as a social worker that I have to pay attention to, that I have to get the details of, to transition and let everybody else know? These are things that I have learned techniques to ask for the information ahead of time. So before I go to or participate in a group, I ask the creator of the group, whether it's the Epilepsy Foundation or the school system or wherever I'm working with, can I have a copy of the notes first? Because that's an easier way for me to take notes. I don't have to let them know that when I was 12 years old, I was hit by a car and I damaged my brainstem, and it's hard for me to write and listen at the same time. I have to let them know that this is an accommodation that I need and deserve. Poverty rates for people with disabilities are high compared to those without disabilities. A notorious disability or a disability that you can visually see is sometimes harder for these people as well. And this is what these rates are going by, because I can see it, so automatically I know there's a difference. But meaning a physical disability, if I'm using a walker, a cane, crutches, or something like that, I can see the difference. Intellectual disabilities, sometimes it's easy to tell, sometimes it's not easy to tell. Again, I have traumatic brain injury. I have a TBI. If you take a picture of my brain, it's going to look as scattered and horrible as it did when I was 12 years old. How I am working, functioning, and doing what I'm doing, it rerouted itself and found a new way to do it. So it was helpful that I was 12, so I was still developing, I guess. And it also helps that I'm a good Irish Catholic girl and very stubborn out there, and nobody was going to tell me no. And I don't say that to be negative. I say that to be positive because, well, I am a woman, and with 3 older brothers, a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do and take care of herself. But it was also a mind frame that this is something that I have to do, and I'm going to work with it until I learn how to do it. Less than half of the individuals aged 21 to 64 were employed, compared to 79% of those without a disability. What we know, the 2 factors which have the greatest impact on future economic success for youth and young adults with disabilities are education and training. Education and training is good for everybody, needs that. And we know as the world continues to succeed and we get further in the world and we start doing things more adamantly at a younger age, we know that education and training are keys to being a successful country. Education can be done in a way that works for you, whether that's audio taping the lecture that you're listening to, or as a young child, having somebody help you take the notes when you're when you're sitting in class, or having a buddy that will give you the notes, or, I mean, there's different ways for, what's the saying? I think different strokes for different folks. So again, it's whatever works for you with the education and training, but it's all out there and accessible for you. Mentoring Transitioning Voices is a curriculum-based program that I developed, which teaches high school students and young adults with disabilities skills necessary to achieve independent living, higher education, and/or employment. I do primarily concentrate on the young adults. I have worked in high schools for a few years. But when COVID hit, of course, we were all prevented from going into schools, and it hasn't gone back to the sessions as steady as they should be, but I still have people reach out to me and the young adults. And like I was saying to people earlier, I established a listserv, which is a group email that I can get out information to everyone, just to let them know about the different things happening within the city that may apply to them and may be helpful for them. And this is still a very active listserv that people ask me questions, ask me to come do guest speaking, or give them information or get connections with them. This curriculum is offered through Liberty Resources, the Center for Independent Living in Philadelphia. Liberty Resources has more than 30 years of experience advocating and providing services for people with cross disabilities. Some of it will say physical, because originally that's how Liberty Resources started way back in 1980. But we have encompassed all people with all disabilities. And if I use the word, like I said earlier, I use the words disability and different ability interchangeably. Some people are I've had some people say, well, I'm a little bit offended by that. I do have a disability and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the way that I do things. I'm very proud of that too. Again, I very highly say I'm a person with a disability, but I also call it a different ability, because you do have the right to learn, and you have the access to learn things in another way that work better for you. So that's different. MTV objectives are to understand your specific disability and your needs. A lot of people that I work with in the beginning, when I say, I'm here because we're going to talk about your disability. In the beginning, when I first started teaching these classes, the young adults especially, you don't know me. You don't know what I don't have a disability, and we get offended by it. Or when I would say, so what is your specific disability? I don't know. You have to talk to my mom. She does all that stuff. Or dad. Not. So that's okay. Well, that's something, but when are you going to take part of it? When are you going to, I say accept in a positive light, because when are you going to accept that this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to move forward? Mom and dad, or caregivers, or whoever that one person or two people are that are your advocates with and work with you and for you, aren't always going to be there. A good example I often give my young adults is, if mom or dad win the lottery, Powerball's getting up there, I think it's 600 million. I'm not staying in Philadelphia. I love it here. I grew up here, and I'll always give back, but I'm still not staying in Philadelphia. I'm going to go to the tropics or somewhere else. The parents might say, and that's my case too, here's all the money, the house is paid off, you'll never have another need again. Do you know how to live independently? Do you know how to live making your own decisions? If you have a cold, I'm not even talking about anything with your disability or different abilities. If you have a cold, do you know how to call the doctor and say, I need an appointment? Or call the doctor and say, I need more of the Tylenol that you gave me, or whatever. Do you understand your medications? These are things that are independence, making my own choices, not by myself, making my own choices. People with disabilities are often unaware of services available to them through their IEP or their ISP. As you get out of high school, it transitions to an ISP often. Individual education plan, individual service plan. Education is when you're in school and that's what you're starting with. Individual. You can't get any more individual than me. You can't get any more individual than you. So that's my famous saying. You can't, because I let the young adults know that this is all about you. Success is possible through the proper systematic support. Mentoring and peer support are the biggest actions that I do at Liberty. There are a few examples of successful people with disabilities in the media for a role model. Again, this is more of when I started, and things have changed a lot. I'm very happy and proud to say, and this is no plug for anybody, but I'm very happy and proud to say that I have seen people in wheelchairs or people with different abilities in Target ads, whether it's the physical ad or on television. Old Navy. Again, I'm not promoting anybody. I mean, go wherever you works best for you, but I have been seeing them more. I think I might have seen one for Macy's before. I mean, you're just seeing it where it's more common, and it's not where you see that person, oh, that poor person, I'm so proud they're on that. I'm not proud of them. I have to make a job and a living somehow too. So of course you're proud, but you know what I'm saying. There are a few examples. So we do have more examples now, but Liberty Resources MTV program provides disability rights leaders as frequent speakers to provide motivation and encouragement for students to reach their specific goals. I will often, when I am, even as I've been doing online classes and online teaching, I will often invite coworkers or other colleagues that I've worked with throughout the city or throughout the surrounding counties before that are good examples for the young adults to hear, listen to, or parents. I keep saying young adults because that's where I started and that's how I go. But with the young adults, I also work with the parents. I also work with the professionals, the providers of these services, or the people helping the young adults, because they have to understand it too. They have to understand what the young adult is going through and how to get help, how to help these services be provided for the young adult, because they don't always know either. And I'm not taking anything away from hospitals and medical care, because that's a wonderful thing. CHOP was my hospital when I was a kid. They did save my life to the degree. I mean, that's where I was transferred when I was hit by a car, and they did amazing work for me. That's where I take my children now, who I do have twin sons who are 10 years old now and were born with a disability. They were born premature and born with a disability. I don't know, I just feel like it's a round circle thing for me, but we go to CHOP there. I mean, but the medical model is one viewpoint. There's more to life than just the medical model. I can't just live in that. So that's what we help to encourage and to collaborate. There's no one model that's right or perfect for anybody. Except if you say, I go with the Liberty Resources model, because, and I laugh and smile with that, is because Liberty Resources isn't going to be, come, we'll give you the answer and that's it. Come, we'll help you find the answer. We'll walk through the answer with you. That might be, Renee, Andrew, I have a child or a young adult that I'm working with epilepsy. They're having this type of a situation, or they're going through this right now. I can start to guide them through, but what are some specifics that we can give and work through with them? Or can I give them your contact information? And then hopefully, or what is in perfect would be for that young adult to, yes, work with Epilepsy Foundation for their specific needs, but then come back to me and still interact with me and say, hey, Mary Beth, this worked for me and this was really good. I'd like the other young adults to know. Or to participate in the young adults group that Liberty Resources has every week. Since COVID, I've bumped it up to every week to make sure that the young adults and youth have support, to help and reach out to each other about different topics and different situations. We offer and develop a voice while learning how to advocate for yourselves. Most youth and young adults, particularly students with disabilities, don't know how to speak assertively for themselves. with the example that I gave earlier, the first few classes that I would go into and start teaching. So what is your disability? I don't have a disability. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't you put that on me. It's not something to be embarrassed or ashamed about. Something to recognize and know that I have, so that I can get the right tools or use the right tools when needed. And I don't want, or the other thing was, oh, I do have a learning disability, or I do have epilepsy, or I do have this, but my mom knows about that, or my dad knows. Well, understandable, but now let's have you start learning about it. What is epilepsy? What are some of the things that you have because of that? You know, how does that affect your day-to-day life? Things like that. These are things that we talk about and go through. And when we say I teach, it's more conversational. PowerPoints are my favorite thing because it gives the young adults, and I always hand out information, although I forgot it today, so forgive me. I usually hand out the information to people so they can take notes, because that's a great way for me to keep that fresh in my head, to take notes while I'm doing something, or to go back and look at it at another time. Because again, my writing skills are quicker and better, and I'm good at that now. Or I don't know if you would call it good, but I can get away with that now, but I'm still not going to get everything, and I'm going to miss some things. Demonstrate independent living skills. Again, when I say independent living, I don't mean by yourself. Of course, that's part of independent living, to live by yourself and maybe have your own apartment or your own room or whatever. But independence means making your own choices. And this is how Liberty Resources encourages independent living for everyone. And again, Liberty Resources works with somebody that's 105 to somebody that's down to 14. And I say 14 because technically that's the federal law for transition age. So that's what I start with. I have worked with younger children as well, but that's more of, they need to, I can't get them as many resources, or I can't make the resources happen for them as quickly as sometimes the doctor's office can, or the psychologist that you're working with, or the school. But we demonstrate independent living skills and helping people learn how to communicate. That's a big one that I do with my young adults. Communication. That's not learning how to speak. That's learning or being aware of when the right time to advocate for myself is, or, well, always, because I'm Liberty, but it's always right to advocate for yourself, but how you do it. I'm not going to, I had to learn when I was 12 and hit by the car. I had people tell me, well, I've always wanted to be a doctor. Since I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a doctor because I was going to help change the world and make everything good for everybody. At the age of 12, the doctors were telling me, now that I was hit by a car and had traumatic brain injury, oh, well, Mary Beth, that's not for you anymore. You're not going to be a doctor. You don't know Mary Beth Otto. I'm going to be a doctor. And when I am a doctor, I'm going to come back and I'm going to shove it in your face or laugh at you. That wasn't the best, most professional thing that I would recommend to anyone right now. But I soon learned that, no, I'm Mary Beth Otto, my maiden name. I'm Mary Beth Otto, and I'm stronger than that. I am going to get there, and I will do it. Am I a doctor? Unfortunately, no. But I am a social worker, and I'm doing everything that I wanted to do as a doctor anyway. The reason I wanted to become a doctor at the age of 5 is because I was going to help get everybody better and help them live a life that they wanted to. That's what I do as a social worker. I help people learn different ways to work in the best way for them. The biggest difference? Money. I didn't do that. I just hit the button.
That's okay. That's fine.
I thought I had another one after that, but I'm sorry if it. Okay. Well, so I just wanted to let everyone know that as an independent living specialist focusing on youth and young adult transition, it's something that's continuous. It's not something that, it's something that I work with you to help you live that way. Now, epilepsy, I've never had it. I don't understand what it's like to be a person with epilepsy. But if you come to me and you start working with me on transition, I bet there's ways that we can relate, that from just my different abilities with as a person with a traumatic brain injury, and people not being happy that people were telling me, no, I couldn't do this, or being frustrated. It wasn't even always about people. I don't want to be totally negative about it. It wasn't about people always saying, oh no, Mary Beth, you're not able to do this, or oh no, Mary Beth, you can't do this. Sometimes I would try to do it and I couldn't. Do you know how many times I have, or do you know how long it took me to be able to read a book again and follow along with it? I have been an avid reader since the moment I learned to recognize letters. I love to read. That was always a big passion of mine. I read 3 and 4 books a week sometimes as a kid. Now, granted, they're kids' books, but then Babysitter Club books, they can keep making them because I read the whole series. I'm not at that anymore, of course, but you know, this was a passion that I had. So as I was in the hospital, in my hospital bed, like, you know, in between things and whatever, I'd either be, number one, so exhausted from just living my daily life or doing my daily things, and the process in the brain, it just made me so tired that I couldn't read anymore. Or another issue with the reading was I would read, and after I was done the paragraph, I have to go back and reread it because I couldn't tell where I was, or it wouldn't flow as nicely. But again, try, and try again. And it wasn't that I just kept reading and reading and reading. It was, I worked on techniques. I do give my cognitive therapist the credit that's due for her. I won't use names because I don't know if I can, but I do give my cognitive therapist and the tools she taught me a lot of credit, because I still use that to this day. Some of the things that she told me were, write it down. Well, I'm not going to write a whole book. And I read well, I mean, you're in school, you have to write things down for notes and things, but when you read for pleasure, who wants to read The Babysitter's Club, or who wants to read a novel, or I mean, anything that you prefer, or a Nancy Drew or anything? Who wants to read that and take notes with it? But if I jotted down just like little points, you know, Christy had a hard time because she was invited to go on vacation with the family that she babysits for, but she was also invited to the camp to do the camp thing, like with school. And I'm trying to pull back my Babysitter Club memories, but I couldn't always remember, well, did Christy do this or did Christy do that? So I would write myself a note or a little bullet point, as I like to say, a bullet point, so I could just look back at my bullet points and say, oh no, Christy did decide to go with the camp instead and help out with that. And then I get right back into my reading and go with it. I can happily say that I have been going to the library at least twice a month with finished books, like finishing my books. And you're like, seriously, like that? Anybody can go and do that, but that's a pleasure for me. That is an activity that I get passionate about. I like just going to the library, get excited to just pick out the books, and then maybe sit in the library and read for a minute, or go home and read for a little bit. That's something that I couldn't do probably from the age of 12. To be honest with you, probably until about the age of 33. It's not that I physically couldn't do it, but it's something that didn't flow with me as nicely. As proud of that as I am that I'm doing these things now, it still gets a little bit embarrassing. With that, that's where independent living comes in. That's where MTV, Mentoring Transitioning Voices, comes into play and is so successful, because I'm not alone. I know who I can go to. And if I don't know who I can go to somebody like an independent living specialist, Mary Beth Morgan, or an independent living specialist, one of my coworkers in the field, and they can help direct me and guide me. So I have all of that information. It was on the last slide, but that's okay, because if anybody needs anything, please let me know. I can give you my card or I can put you on my listserv. I'd be happy to do so. And again, I work with the parents and the professionals just as much as I work with the youth and young adults. It's the same information depending on how you need it. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes. That's perfect. Helps me think of things that I never mentioned. No, and that's and well, first I'm going to tell you that things happen for a reason. So you were here today and I was here as the speaker for a reason. So we will keep in contact. I'd love to put you on my listserv, or even if you don't want all of that youth and young adult information and different things out there, we could be a peer support for each other through Liberty Resources. Refresh my memory. What was that question again? Oh.
Like for people, other people who have other, she has education as well. I mean, education. There's other people who have who really want to certify, not to, you know, how to get your certification.
It is a challenge. It is a challenge.
What steps, what ideas or suggestions for your steps? You don't want to just do what's
I had to learn that it wasn't just going, I wasn't just going to go with the flow like I had been before. Now, people always tell me, just let me put this little pun in there. People always tell me, but you were only 12 years old. Like, you aren't an adult. You weren't making your own decisions yet. At 12 years old, I was making my own decisions. I mean, my parents were there. But I mean, you're making your own decisions on how you want to grow and how you want to do things and things like that. And I had to learn to take a step back and ask for assistance, ask for the help that I needed, ask for the things that I didn't know how to ask for before, or I didn't need to. As a child, again, I was in 6th grade when I was hit by the car and this occurred. So because it was May 2nd of 1992, I was, of course, I went straight in the hospital, and they let me, I didn't finish out the school year, of course, but because my grades were so high and because they thought I was a straight A student previously, because I had such high grades and such an adamant personality, they thought it would be best to continue me on with the 7th grade, because as a person with traumatic brain injury, that was something that was going to help coach me along and be an even keel for me. Okay. I'm a social worker because I went to Temple University.
What do you recommend? That's what I'm talking about. For example, would you recommend to get certain?
Oh, that's the disability office, the Office of Disabilities. I'm sorry, I was thinking too far ahead. The Office of Disabilities. And I would recommend that for anybody going into or thinking about going to college before you get started. before you get started, go to them. And if you haven't done that and you're already in college or you're already at the next level, it doesn't have to be college per se. It could be the next transition part of schooling that you are. And if you didn't think about that or that wasn't on the top of your mind, do it now. But I made myself very familiar with the Office of Disability just to let them know, number one, you need written permission for the accommodations that I needed. I needed someone to be my note taker, especially in college. A lot of times I felt like I got the better end of the deal because when I was in college and I didn't start college wanting to be a social worker. I started college wanting to be an occupational therapist because of, like I said, I wanted to be a doctor and help make the world better. When I realized that as a sophomore in high school, chemistry showed me that my memory wasn't quick enough. I'm not going to say it wasn't good enough. I'm going to say it wasn't quick enough and sharp enough to be a doctor because I couldn't remember the different formulas and different things at a drop of a hat like I needed to all the time. And I thought to myself, well, if I want to be a pediatrician, I can't tell somebody that comes to me with a broken arm, broken leg, or any kind of a thing. Oh, wait, let me think. What's that bone named again? What's that called again? I can't do that. I can't pause. So I thought to myself, what's another way that I could help people do things in a way that worked best for them? Occupational therapy. That's what they did for me at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Well, that's what occupational therapy is. Helps you do things in a way that work for you. So I did start pre-OT at Temple University. And as I started and continued on, it was I had a lot of psychologies. I had a lot of sociologies. I did everything and it was perfect with the one caveat of anatomy. They gave me anatomy as a freshman coming in because you have to be able to know and recognize the body parts and systems, not from the medical point of view, like a doctor would per se, but I need to know and understand how that's going to work and affect the body as well as an occupational therapist. What do they say? 3 strikes and you're out. I took it once. It was too much and too overwhelming for me. I didn't pass. I'm not giving up. I'm going to take it again, but I'm going to use some other different skills and work with more of the disability officer. I'm going to get tutors. I'm going to have this. I'm going to see what skills or techniques they have. Took it again. Didn't work for me. I took it a third time. My parents said, Mary Beth, are you sure now we'll support you and we'll do what we have to. Again, these are all loans. I wasn't getting gifted, but I said one more time. By that time, I was doing things a little bit differently, using some of the techniques from the past. And I had difficulty with it and I wasn't going to be successful. So I decided, not because somebody told me to, but because I decided that I'll go into another field, which social work was the best for me at that time, or still is. Social work was the best way for me to be able to communicate with others and give them ideas about things that they were able to do in a way that worked for them. So, and at Liberty Resources, we help people with disabilities to have, I started to help them as a supports coordinator to help them have attending care, which is somebody to help you with your daily activities and the different things that you need to do to accomplish in a way that work for you with all types of disabilities. But then there was like I said, when I was there for a few years, there was the grant that that Liberty had the opportunity to apply for and get, and they for the youth and young adults to develop a program to help them transition. Well, ILS, Independent Living Services Department, was doing that, not supports coordination. But when I read about that, ILS was doing that, oh my gosh, I have to be part of that. So I worked it out that for that year, Mondays and Fridays, I worked with ILS. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I had to get all my other sports coordination responsibilities done. It worked out. And at the end of that summer, I transitioned fully to ILS because I had coordinated the Mentoring Transitioning Voices program and had a successful summer project with teens and young adults within the Philadelphia school system, coming in and learning about transition and learning how to live with a different ability in a successful way and be proud of themselves.
The weekly groups that you have mentioned that are over Zoom,
Yes.
how is it structured? Is it like every week there's a topic that is talked about? Or is it more like a support group where people actually like, how does it work?
Both. The group, again, used to be at Liberty Resources, but then when the pandemic hit, we went to virtual. It is a group that the young adults, right in the beginning of April, because it was the end of March that the pandemic struck. In the beginning of April, I said, let's start doing this once a week. Let's do this every Friday. Just get on here and just be able to talk, to be there for support for each other. What you're going through, the questions you have, or just to sit back and have fun and say, I need not to think and knock, knock, who's there? You know, that kind of a thing. And then I had always had some sort of a subject or some sort of a topic that we would review and go over. Sometimes it was about different abilities. Sometimes it was about the new movie theater opened up on Dollar Avenue or something like that, just to keep the young adults intertwined and together. Probably by the end of April, things were getting so interactive, or I just proceeded on with it because it started, I guess, when we were still in person. You tell me what you want to hear. You start making up, in 1 second, you start making up the topics. I want this is about you and for you. So you start doing it. That's not me pushing the work over, because I still review and go over things with young adults to make sure before they present, it's all good and ready to go. But it's about them taking the control of, this is what I want to talk about with brain injury. This is what I want to talk about with epilepsy. This is what I want to talk about with getting a job. This is what I want to talk about with going out and having fun, socialization. One of my young adults 3 weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, said, I want to do spring. Can I do a presentation on spring? I said, absolutely. He did such a good presentation, and it had, because he had pictures of flowers. He had pictures of himself outside with the sunshine. He was talking about, like, you know, migration and how birds come back, and, you know, the different animals and this and that. And what did that have to do with professionalism and a disability? Everything, because it had you relaxed. It had you open. It had you talking to and socializing with people in a way that was a comfort level for you. And of course, we were talking about spring and flowers and everything else, but that also went into, I sometimes hate that I can't always get in and out of my, the one consumer that I was working with. I can't always get in and out of my house because it's not accessible. They had to go live with their brother and sister. So I can't always get in and out, and it's not always accessible for me. And this online thing all of the time isn't really for me. I'd rather be able to get in and out and go to the classes and this and that. So that's what I'm working on with him right now. We are working on different things to stay active and stay social, but we're also working on, he doesn't want us to make the door bigger. He wants to be able to get in and out and be able to have his own place that's accessible for him and that he can utilize and live, making his own choices and doing what he needs to as with supports. So that's what we are also working on to get today as well. So it goes into a million things. Yes.
Is there a cost to the group?
You have to have a disability.
Then my next question is, so it says not just how do I get involved? Is there a website?
Liberty Resources is www.libertyresources.org. You can go to that website, or you can call 215-634-2000, and that will give you our general line, and you can leave a message. When you say youth or young adult transition, or when you say transition in any sense of the realm, they're going to transfer you to me. My extension is 335. I am going to say, you can call me. I do check my voicemail once, possibly twice a day, but things have been so intact with online doing things and just getting done. And I don't say that as a rushed thing. I mean, just that's where the world has gone online now, that I would recommend if you want to contact me, you can call me and leave me a message. If I don't get back to you right away, don't get insulted, email me. Because I'm definitely going to get back to you if you email me. Yes, I could share my email, marybethmorgan@libertyresources.org. And that's all one word. And I can give out cards, and anybody that wants anything, I'm happy to share. And my specific extension is 335 for those that want my direct line. But these are things that it's about giving people choices and letting them realize that they have the control. I know parents or even professionals, oh no, well, they can't do this, or they're not going to get up to that level. They can make the decision to, I don't encourage solitude. I encourage knowing who to ask or how to get the help that you need. So a young adult, for me, sometimes I still may have a brain lapse where I forget what I have to do after I talk to a consumer, or I forget how to get this one set of information into the system, into our computer system, or I don't know how to go retrieve this from the computer system, but I know it's there. It's not as easy that I can just step out of my office and say, hey, Rodney, how do you do that again? But I will email a coworker, or I will go back in my previous emails and things like that to refresh my memory on how to do something or how to get into it. At 42, I'm not quite as embarrassed by it anymore, but it still does dig me a little bit. It does, and that will probably never stop. So it's never going to stop for that young adult that you're the parent of, or that young adult that you are now. That's never going to stop. But you know what that does? Gives you ammunition. Gives you ammunition. I use everything that I couldn't do or that I have difficulty with as the fuel for my fire to, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. This is a personal choice, but this is also a choice that has to be collaborative, because I don't do it on my own. I'm the most independent person that I can think of, but I don't do any of it on my own. And part of that independence, I'm just letting you know, sometimes you have to say sorry. So, again, my mind goes rampant when I speak about transition, because there are so many wonderful things that I've learned, that I have utilized, and that the young adults and the older adults teach me. And I say older adults because I'm still a peer specialist as one of our core services. I'm still a peer specialist at Liberty Resources, and have older adult people that with disabilities, and none of them, well, not none of them, but most of them are in traumatic brain injury. I still have adult resources that I use my techniques with. Do I tell them? I'm not going to tell them to tape record something or ask for notes prior to the meeting because of they're taking notes like a class. But I may say, ask the doctor, or have things written down for the doctor that you want to make sure that you mention and speak about. That's not just for independence, so I can do it and I don't have to depend on mom and dad asking the questions for me. I, at 42, again, still write them down when I'm going to my doctor or a specialist, because I don't want to forget. And that's a common thing for all of us. How many times have you gone into any office, whether it's a doctor or just a different office, and you get so wrapped up in something that somebody said, or there's a point made that you're really interested in, and then you walk out and you say, damn, I wish I asked that. So, I mean, but everybody's like that. I don't do that as much because I write it down. And well, you think, oh, well, kids today in today's technology, you're right. but I'm still old fashioned that I write it down. The best trick that I know, write it down, or the best reward, I shouldn't say trick, the best reward that I have, crossing it off. Think about homework. Weren't you thrilled when you were done studying or done that math page that you had to do? Cross it off, it's done. Well, I learned to do that when I was a young adult or in grade school and then in high school to make sure that I was doing all of my tasks and getting things done and didn't have to constantly go back and keep looking at page 42 to make sure it was done. If it was crossed off, that was a way that I knew it was done. I still, to this day, write everything down. A lot of times I'll write my daily schedule down so I can stay on track. Did I do this yet? Did I do that yet? Do I feel immature and babyish about that? Not at all. It's a technique that works. It's a technique that I've had other professionals ask me about. And I don't have to say, oh, well, as a person with traumatic brain injury, I just say, it works best for me and keeps me on top of it. Yeah, you know what, Mary Beth, I'm going to use that too. And that's how it works. If there's any questions or if anybody has any questions, again, after you walk out or walking down the street, please feel free to contact me through my email or calling.